Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 3BeerPod. It is episode number 5. I am Chris, and
I'm
that is
Tim.
Tim. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for tonight, Chris. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, we're pretty pumped. And Joe just jumped online, so we're all ready to go with our guest for episode 5 of the 3BeerPod. Welcome to it as we talk beer. Tonight we're talking baseball. I got my Jays cap on. You've got
84 Tigers jersey on here. Feeling good about it.
Very
Trammell,
nice.
number 3, Alan Trammell, Hall of
That's
Famer.
really cool. So we're going to get to talk to Joe here in a couple of minutes, but let's get into things here as we want to have as much time with Joe as possible. Let's start right away with what you drinking, bud, here tonight. What are you drinking, Timmer?
Oh, tonight. I'm going back to a favorite here.
Nice.
And I'll tell you why. This is Flywheel Blonde from Chatham, Kent. Sons of Kent Brewing Company. The reason I'm going with this one is the Sons of Kent sponsor our baseball team. Since this is a baseball themed pod tonight, I thought I'd go with what I know.
Well, I don't think we'll be playing softball this year at all, but it's good to represent our team sponsor. Timmer, I'm drinking some McLean's Lazy Hazy IPA. IPAZ. There you go.
Ouch.
From McLean. This is from Hanover, Ontario, which I have been to a couple times. I spent a week in Hanover one weekend. It was a good time. So I haven't had this yet. Have you had one of these?
No, I haven't either. What do we got?
It's very tasty. I don't put mine in a glass. You're not doing that tonight, eh?
Not with the Flywheel Blonde, just because I'm trying to get the old after baseball beer feel.
We should be drinking that in a parking lot, shouldn't we?
I know. Season should be starting here soon, but we'll put it on hold for now for the good of the cause.
There you go. Hey, let's get into some beer buzz. What's going on in the world of beer here before we get to Joe tonight? A couple of things. I found this stat, Timmer. Stella Artois has the oldest logo in the world of any logo for any business. It's been used since the brewery was founded in Belgium, 1366.
For any business, that's
for
impressive.
Any business. There's something that may come up in jeopardy at some point.
I'll write that one down. Hopefully, some of our local craft breweries will be around for that long as well.
We were talking about this just before we went on here tonight. By the way, any comments, any questions you have, you can throw them up online. With the COVID going on and the pandemic right now, it looks like small breweries, across Canada are in some trouble right now. Just read a stat: 1,100 craft breweries, which employ about 10,000 people, are obviously very vulnerable, like a lot of businesses are right now. And out of those 1,100 craft breweries, about 80% of them have opened in the last 5 years. And you know how the first 5 years in a business is pretty tough. So add a pandemic to it.
That's crazy. I can't imagine what these guys are going through, especially when they had, kegs full of beer, trying to get out to their restaurants and bars to have it sitting on this beer. Hopefully they're able to get it back into some cans and bottles and get it out there to us. Again, last week we talked about the website that had all of the ways of getting craft beer delivered to you. So check that out and support these guys.
I thought a comment in the story: name another industry over the past 10 years that has put hundreds of new manufacturing facilities in small towns across Canada. That was a pretty interesting quote there. So. Yeah. I got a couple other stories here. The way that breweries are dealing with the COVID, obviously people can't get into the tap rooms. So some interesting stories. The Exchange Brewery virtual trivia night at Exchange Brewery up in Niagara on the Lake. You've been there, right?
I have been there. Pretty neat little brewery on the main street there in Niagara on the Lake.
So on Monday, I think it's Monday nights, you can go online and you can order a virtual trivia package. They deliver the beer to your door, and then you go online that night and play along.
That sounds like a great idea.
I love that idea.
That's a great one.
Muskoka Brewery's doing a similar thing. Stay-at-home trivia night. 300 trivia fans joined for their first trivia night. Fun gets started at 5 o'clock on Thursdays. You can follow them on their Facebook page. And Collective Arts has a virtual happy hour. They're up in Hamilton. Artists, musician, brewers, and others are jumping online, and they're jumping on their YouTube, their Instagram channels. They've had a street artist come in as well to be a part of that. So
I love the idea of a virtual happy hour. That's fantastic. I think we might need to start one of those here in Chatham, Kent.
How about Bayfield Brewing up in Bayfield, Ontario? They've now offering Snook's Stout, in honor of Huron County native and Stanley Cup champion Ryan O'Reilly.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a cool little brewery too. I was able to stop up there last summer. Nice little small spot there, on the main drag.
O'Reilly grew up in Varna, which isn't too far from
Yep.
Bayfield, and his nickname was Snook, and so they named the beer after him. And you can buy some of the beer while supplies last. You buy a 6-pack, you have a chance of getting an autographed um, photo of Ryan O'Reilly, and they'll
That's really
order
cool.
they'll deliver all the way down to about London area. But you can find out more on that. They were the official pouring sponsor of his Stanley Cup party.
That's
So
amazing.
you can
I
imagine.
bet you that was a party.
Yeah, you can imagine. You can imagine. Bayside Brewery in Erio is now delivering. They've got a new brew out as well. Deep Divot Clear Lager, which is now available. I haven't seen this in the stores yet, but it's in the
No, I
LC
haven't either.
your store locations.
They have online ordering now, right? Bayside
Yes.
has online. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Toboggan Brewery, Richmond Row, downtown London, is helping deliver groceries as well right now.
And they bring you beer too?
Bring in beer and they'll deliver groceries too. So there's
that's a great combo right there. Congrats to Toboggan.
Powerhouse in London is what are they doing here? One of the ever expanding rosters of beers. They've got a new Dunkel released in April out of the old Kellogg plant there. Curbside pickup is available too.
That's like there's like a play area for kids and a brewery for adults. I have not made it there yet. When this clears up, I guarantee you my 7-year-old will be burning off some energy while I supervise from a distance.
That's so funny. There you go. Getting some comments here. Should we get into this? Because this is what we're pretty pumped for tonight. Thanks, Aaron. My mom's watching tonight. That's great.
Yeah. BJ's on for happy hour. Nice jersey. Yeah. Right on, Quigs.
Stonehouse Brewery and Varna's in there too. Hey guys,
awesome.
Let's bring in our guest. Our first guest here tonight is from Windsor, Ontario. You got the doorbell. There you go.
Oh yeah.
Welcome to the show from Windsor, Ontario. It is Joe Siddle. Good evening, Joe. How you doing, buddy?
Gentlemen, I am very well. I'm just not hearing your partner. I hope that fixed.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh man.
I gotta be able to hear him.
Oh
you can hear me though.
Yes, very clearly.
You can't hear me, Joe? Oh no.
No. Okay, we'll see if we can get Timmer hooked up there.
Okay.
All right, Joe, we'll pull him back in here in a minute. Timmer's going to get that set up. First of all, where are we talking to you from?
I'm at home. I live in South Windsor, born and raised. My wife Tamara and I have 4 children. We have a couple of them still hanging around at home, so we still have a pretty busy house, even though they're not young kids anymore. So I snuck upstairs here just to get out of the happy hour and dinner hour downstairs. So I got a little quiet spot.
Did you crack a beer tonight, or are you going to hold on?
So unfortunately, I'm not local, but I am looking for something local. Okay. I have a Glutenberg blonde, and I am a celiac guy. So I am no gluten. So I've fallen in love with Glutenberg blonde, and I'm joining you for this. But I'm looking for those local craft breweries around the Windsor and Essex County area to come up big for me.
Yeah, that's good. We had a guest on last week, Marty Turco, played for the Dallas Stars, and is part owner of the Kingsville Brewery.
Right on.
Yeah, and it's really, really good stuff. So if you get a chance to get down there, and we've talked to some others down that way as well, so you're certainly in good company down there. Tim's jumping back on here, but we're going to get him all set up. But did you make it? So you were in I guess Dunedin down in spring training, all set to go. When did you decide to come back to Windsor, and when did you get that all set up?
Well, things shut down there right in the middle of March, and I had stayed a few extra days. My wife and I were down there, and but everything was shutting down, and everybody's taking off and going home. So we came home as well. So it was mid-March, been home since, and we were just told, like everybody, to be on hold. And of course, a lot of things have changed since then, and I'd like to think maybe some things for the better, and maybe, just maybe, we might be getting closer to perhaps a baseball season. There's more and more talk going on, but we're just sitting, we're laying low. We are doing a couple of our programs, our Blue Jay Centrals virtually. We've done a couple now. The first one we focused on Vladdy a bit. We just did one that came out yesterday, and they're just online at sportsnet.ca. They're not on TV actually, because there's nobody in the Rogers building right now. So we're doing a couple of those just to keep busy, and it's not a lot, but it's something, and it's fun to talk baseball a little bit, despite unfortunately what's going on all around us.
Well, that's what we're pumped. We Tuesday nights we sit and talk beer. We've talked hockey. We've talked breweries, and we're looking forward to baseball. Tim, we got you back there. Can Joe hear you?
Hey, Joe.
That's much better.
All right.
Because that jersey has to be next to the Old English D. Yes. My favorite jersey. I didn't get to wear that one, but That is a beauty. I love that one.
She is a beauty. I pulled it out today. I got number 3 Trammel on here today. You know what? I got real excited when I started thinking about baseball today. So I'm glad to have you on here.
Well, my pleasure. I love to see the Blue Jay hat and the Tiger jersey. The first thing I saw, I was like, here we go again.
For sure, Joe. What's it like being a lifelong Tiger fan and then getting to play for the Detroit Tigers?
The best way I can put it is a dream come true. There's no other way to put it. There are a lot of highlights in a career when you play so long. And the first highlight was, of course, just getting a major league call-up. And then it was the first hit. Then it was the first home run, which actually came at Tiger Stadium. But so a lot of great memories. But to grow up a Tigers fan, guys, and my brothers used to take us to Tigers games all the time. And I spent a lot of time at Tiger Stadium. And I idolized Lance Parrish because I was a young catcher growing up. And I got the plastic souvenir helmet. You remember those that they used to give away? And I used the whiteout, the liquid paper, to put a number 13 on the back. And one time in Pee Wee baseball, one time in Pee Wee baseball, there it is at Central Park. I wore it in a game playing Pee Wee baseball in my neighborhood. The umpire didn't notice until about the third inning when I took a foul tip and it shattered, and I got all kinds of heck for it. But I tried to get away with it because I thought I was cool, right? You had the helmet on backwards like the big leaguers did. So again, to play in Tiger Stadium for the Detroit Tigers, it was fantastic.
That's a good look for you there, Timmer.
I'm rocking this for the rest of the show here. This is what I love here.
We just had a comment here, Joe. What a great guy. BJ Griffiths had a couple of classes with you when you went back to school at the University of Windsor.
I was an adult student, and I'm glad that BJ is tuning in. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. You know, I just did 1 year of university when I left high school, and it wasn't even playing baseball. I actually went to Central Michigan University as a quarterback. Went to school for 1 year, but then I signed the next summer to play professional baseball. They were hosting just a local Montreal Expos camp for kids around the area, and I guess it went pretty well for a couple of days. And lo and behold, I went and pursued a professional baseball career, but I just did the 1 year of university. So after my career, I enrolled at the University of Windsor, and it took a little while, but I think it was about 7 years to finish my last 3 years of my HK degree. So all in all, it was about a 20-year degree, but something I'm still pretty proud of. So glad BJ's tuning in.
That's cool. Joe, we're pretty geeked to have you on here tonight. We love baseball, and obviously you're enjoying a beer with us here tonight. So let's try to start at the beginning. You're from Windsor, and you kind of hinted at there. You went to one of those camps, and Tim and I, we've seen these camps come to town. They roll into town, and every kid shows up, and they go out there, and very rarely do you see anybody get signed or go anywhere. That's what you did, and you ended up actually signing a contract at one of those camps.
Yeah, and you described it to a T. I mean, when I got the original phone call to come out to the camp, they said that they were hosting a camp, and it was out in Tecumseh at Lacoste Park. Invited me to come out, and they said, bring a few buddies. And I was like, sure. I mean, I was so naive at the time. I think I was 19 years old, and I was about 2.5, 3 weeks away from going back to Central Michigan to school because we were starting classes and 2-a-day football practices in mid-August. This was late July. So naive is probably the best word to describe it because I had no visions of signing a professional baseball contract. It was quite literally just something to do for a two-day camp. We were just going out there for fun, and that's all that happened. And then usually what they do is they might see 1 or 2 kids and invite them to a national camp in Montreal at the Big O. And I bypassed that, and they called me after the camp the next day, and they said that we'd like to sign you to a professional contract. And I remember saying, well, no, I can't. I have to be back to school in a couple of weeks. And they're like, no, listen, we'd like to maybe come and talk to your parents and explain this to you. So I took about a week to decide. It wasn't easy, you know. I mean, it was a full ride football scholarship at CMU and a chance to be a quarterback and get my education. So it was really a nice problem to have when I look back at it, of course. But what a life-altering decision I ended up making by choosing the baseball route, because I'm sure I probably wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you guys about baseball and now getting into a broadcasting career.
That is so cool. So you play with the Montreal Expos. So you're a Canadian kid, and you're a Tigers fan, as we talked about. But you play for the Montreal Expos. That's got to be a nice little feather in your cap as well.
It was. And I think the fact that I came up through the minor leagues with the Expos, and as I said, you know, dreams come true. And the first one for me was just getting to the major leagues, because any minor league baseball player you talk to, you grind it out in the minor leagues, hopefully for several years, but till you get there. But when you finally get there, it's such a huge payoff. And it really is achieving that ultimate goal. But also for me as a Canadian to do it with the Montreal Expos, that was a little extra special. I debuted in 3 River Stadium in Pittsburgh. I was called up from Ottawa, AAA Ottawa, and the Expos were in Pittsburgh. And when we went home from that trip, there was 2 days. I think there was 2 games left in that trip when I arrived, and came back, and to walk into the Big O and to put a Montreal Expos uniform on at home on Canadian soil, I think that's when it was really all sinking in. And of course, you know how Canadians treat each other. I was welcomed with open arms, and again, it was pretty special. I mean, there was another guy by the name of Larry Walker, Canadian. He was pretty good too. So I'm not saying I took any spotlight from anybody, but it was quite a thrill to say the least.
How awesome is it that you spent some time with Larry Walker and that he finally got almost inducted this year? It looks like they're going to delay it till next year. What was that like? What do you remember about playing with Larry Walker?
What I remember about Larry was he's quite a character. I don't know if he portrays that a whole lot when you see him in interviews and all, but he is a card to say the least. And he is a guy that really took me in when my first big league camp when I got there. Now, as a catcher, oftentimes they'll bring young catchers to Major League spring training because they simply need bodies to catch all the bullpens. So I was called to Major League camp rather early in my career, and it wasn't necessarily for things I was doing, how great I was doing, but you need bodies. And I remember getting there, and Larry was one of the first ones early on. He's throwing spikes in my locker and batting gloves. Do you need any bats? And he just treated you as one of his own, which I guess I was because I was Canadian. And that's what I remember about Larry, the person early on, but then now to reflect back and to finally see that he's going to be enshrined in Cooperstown. It's a great thrill because he's a guy that, I mean, the offensive numbers speak volumes. I know there's a lot of debate and the whole Coors Field thing and all that. But, you know, when people ask me about Larry as the player and playing with him, what really strikes me are more the intangibles, not the home runs, not the stolen bases, but it was setting up base runners almost. He would range into the right center gap with a runner on first on a base hit, and he would almost like lollygag to the ball and bait that runner to go first to third. And sure enough, he would go first to third and he'd come up firing. Like he just knew the game inside and out, and he just really saw the field very well. Those are the things that I take most from Larry because those are things you can't teach. A lot of guys have tremendous talent, and anybody that gets to the big leagues obviously has talent. But that's that intangible that really takes guys to the next level.
That's awesome.
I wanted to ask about Pedro Martinez too, because you had the chance to catch him as he was coming up. What was that like, a young Pedro Martinez as he was just taking off?
I've never seen such a little guy so fierce. No. This guy had no fear whatsoever. And, you know, first and foremost, he had great stuff. I mean, he had a great arm, but he could spin the curveball. He had a phenomenal changeup. And what makes the great ones so special, first of all, he's a hard thrower, but he had a great curveball, but he could also locate it. And then he had a great changeup, and he could locate it. So when you've got 3 great pitches and you can throw them anytime in the count, that's almost unfair. Any hitter will tell you that's just not fair. And he could do that, and he was not afraid whatsoever, as his reputation speaks, to brush hitters off the plate. If you were going to get comfortable in there, if he was trying to go away and he saw you taking a pretty good healthy swing, and that was my job as a catcher too, but the limited time that I got to catch him, you're going to make him honest. And, you know, this isn't about beaning people and drilling people. It's about pitching inside. It's probably something we don't see near as much anymore. And again, not hitting people so much as keeping them honest, because as hitters, when you get a pretty good brush back pitch, and I mean up higher in the letters area, that will keep you honest. And now maybe you won't quite get to that pitch on the other half of the plate as efficiently. And that's what pitching is. That's pitching 101. But Pedro did it to a T. Absolutely.
Hey, Chris, I'm just going to take a time out here. I'm going to crack in. We just want to stick with the 3Beer podcast theme. I'm going to drink one from Bench, mostly because that's where my baseball career has taken me. This is Bench's session IPA.
I spent a lot of time there too, you know.
Gainesville, Ontario. So this one goes with my number 2 for tonight. It's the Bench.
Cheers. Joe, let's get into the next season. 1996, you played 18 games with the Florida Marlins at the time, and they were on the way to the World Series, I think, the next year. What was your time like in Florida? You just missed out on that one.
I did. It was, you know, as a minor league free agent, it was the first time I left the Expos organization because I signed and came up as an Expo, got to the major leagues a couple of times in 93 and 95, and I was let go at the end of the 95 season. I was a minor league free agent. And I was contacted by the Marlins to sign. It was a nice offer to be a minor league free agent and go and play in AAA and have a chance to get to the big leagues with another club for the first time. And I was very excited about that. And lo and behold, the final day or second last day, in spring training. I was in big league camp with the Marlins, and then I got shuttled over the last week to minor league camp when I got sent down. Just getting ready to head to AAA Charlotte, North Carolina, in the International League, and we were in the minor league game. There was a pop-up in foul territory. I'll never forget it. It was right by the first base dugout. And I, as a catcher, was going over to field the pop-up, and the first baseman was coming over also. And Russ Mormon, love the guy. He was a teammate of mine, but a big dude. He was about 6'4", 6'5", and he reached up and over me to kind of call me off. But he caught the ball, which was great. But in doing so, he kneed his knee into the side of my knee and tore my medial collateral ligament. So I went down in a hurry, and I was fortunate. I never really had a lot of injuries throughout my career, especially things that set me back that long. And sure enough, it was I was out 6 to 8 weeks. The next day, I was down in Miami seeing the team's orthopedic surgeon, who was also the surgeon for the Miami Dolphins. And I remember coming out, and I was nervous. I was scared. I'm not going to lie to you. I was really scared. I really thought this was like, wow, this could be my whole knee. It could be my career. And he came out and he said, I got good news and bad news. He said, first, the bad news is that it's a tear. The good news is that I see these all the time. NFL players are back playing in the secondary, these DBs, in like 4 to 6 weeks. So he told me 6 to 8, and I was back in about 7. So very grateful. I went to AAA Charlotte, and I got a call up just for about a month. Charles Johnson, if you remember that name, the Marlins' #1 catcher, broke his thumb, I think. So I got about a month up with the Marlins. And ironically, we were playing in Ottawa against the Ottawa Lynx when I got the call in my hotel room to get on a plane to LA. They were playing the Dodgers, which was really cool as well.
That's awesome. Andre Dawson was another Hall of Famer that was on that team. The Hawk.
Andre was and I was also in spring training and during my time with the Marlins. That was the end of his career, if you remember. He was with the Marlins. And unfortunately, that memory isn't as good for me with the Hawk because, at that time, every day he was in the training room. He had ice packs on his legs and his ankles. He was just really at the end, which was tough to see. But what just a freak of nature the Hawk was. And early on, I think it was early in my spring trainings with the Expos, a lot of those names too. I got to spend some time with a lot of those big name type players too. But Andre's one to remember. It was unfortunate. It was at the very end when I spent time with him with the Marlins.
Joe, let's get you to Detroit. And I remember this. I'm not a Tigers fan at all. Tim's a Tigers fan. I'm a Jays fan 100%. But I told you in our conversation is that your brother was my guidance counselor. So I remember the conversation at the school being like, Ted's brother just signed with the Tigers. And I thought, well, how cool is that? Because we had obviously followed your career down in these parts. So 98, you end up with the Detroit Tigers. And what is that like to finally come home and play for the Detroit Tigers?
The way it happened was crazy. I mean, it seems to be when I reflect back, when you ask me questions like this, the crazy type stories. I was a minor league free agent again after I was let go I went back to the Expos in 97, was a AAA all year and got let go. So I was a minor league free agent again. And I was contemplating things with my agent, and he was looking for my guidance. I was looking for his. Well, the next day I was taking my father-in-law, I believe, to the airport in Detroit, and I was crossing the border. And on the half-hour update on sports radio was that the Tigers had traded, I believe it was Matt Wahlbeck. I knew it was a catcher. It was Matt Wahlbeck, I believe. And my wheels just got spinning thinking, well, wait a minute. When a big league catcher goes, maybe there's a domino effect. So I contacted my agent right when I got home, and I said, do me a favor. Just heard the Tigers made a move. Maybe they're looking for depth in AAA. It's a shot in the dark, but what a dream that would be, is to even be in AAA Toledo and maybe go to camp with the Tigers. So he looked into it, and he calls me back the next morning at 9 a.m. And I didn't even say hello. And he said, do you want to be a Tiger? And I think the phone almost fell out of my hands. I said, you've got to be kidding me. He said, yeah, no, they want to sign you. They want some veteran leadership in AAA and have some insurance. So sure enough, I signed there, and I was called up in late July, I guess it was, and stayed. I got lucky too. I stayed the rest of the season. You remember Raul Casanova? He had pulled a hamstring. That was the reason why I got called up. So I was up in Detroit, supposed to be for 2 weeks. We were in Baltimore at Camden Yards. I didn't play that day that I was due to go back when Casanova was due to come off the DL. I was in the bullpen at the end of the game. We're walking off the field after the game ended. And this is at Camden Yards now. So we're headed to the dugout, to the third base dugout. And as we're walking in, I'm expecting to get called into the office. But instead, and I can't remember who it was, but some of the relief pitchers were talking about, they said Casanova got hit by a pitch and broke his wrist today in his rehab game. And of course, I mean, we never wish anything bad upon anyone, guys. But as soon as I heard that, I kind of went, oh. And sure enough,
Wow.
he ended up staying on the injured list, and I stayed the rest of the season. So it was great. What a wonderful experience for me.
That call, you want to be a Tiger, is I think something that everyone around this area that's not a Blue Jays fan is something that they want to hear all the time.
Yeah.
Your first career home run is in Tiger Stadium. Tell us what you remember about something that I dreamed about as a kid.
Yeah.
You got to live out the first home run in Tiger Stadium. You got to remember what that felt like.
Well, I was hoping to be the first of many, but it was the first of one. So it was very memorable. Yeah, and you believe it or not, it was against Seattle, but it was off of left-hander Jeff Facero. Well, Jeff was my teammate in Montreal previously. So that was even more ironic. And as you guys know, you probably have the internet. You know, my stats necessarily offensively aren't the greatest. And Jeff knew that too. He loved pitching to me because that was my strength, was catching and being behind the plate. Not much of a hitter. Well, Jeff gives up a home run to me, and I think he just thought, are you kidding me right now? Siddle hits his only home run of his career off me. I'd love to talk to him. I haven't seen him in years. But yeah, it went off the facade of the upper deck in right center field, and it came back on the field. And the ironic thing is that once we hear another ironic story, well, most times when guys get their first major league hit, first major league home run, your team personnel, they try to retrieve the ball. Well, the center fielder for the Mariners was Ken Griffey Jr. He picked it up and fired it back up into the bleachers. So when he fired it back up in the bleachers, of course, that makes it a little bit more difficult to retrieve. But our team personnel went up there. The person that had my baseball would not give it up because Ken Griffey Jr. threw it to him. So I think they ended up the next day, they talked to Griffey, and I never got a chance to talk to Ken Griffey Jr. about this, but apparently he signed something or other, and they gave him the ball, and I got the baseball. So I still to this day thank him for that because it's pretty cool. I've saved 2 baseballs, and it was my first major league hit in Montreal at the Big O off Frank Tanana, and my first major league home run at Tiger Stadium. Does it get any better?
That's awesome. All these names are right in our wheelhouse, Tim. These are names that we've thrown about.
I saw his first hit was against Tanana, and I was Tiger memories again. That's awesome.
That's so awesome. Joe Siddle with us from Windsor, former Major League Baseball player. So your career ends. You're in Windsor. I wanted to ask about being a bullpen catcher, and what is that exactly? And is that like a job like any other job? Are you only a catcher at the home games? Are you on the road? What is that gig like?
Well, let me rephrase this and correct you just a bit. A lot of people ask me this question, and would you believe when I got home from playing, I kind of took that year off, and then I'm thinking, what am I going to do with myself? Well, that's when I enrolled in HK at the University of Windsor. I thought the first thing I do wanted, it's something, just some unfinished business. I always wanted to finish my degree off. So I started to pick away part-time. We had 4 children, my wife and I at the time, so we were pretty busy. She was working. I was doing the stay-home dad thing. So I started taking one course at a time. But then the next off season, I think it was 2 seasons after I retired, the Tigers contacted, I was getting offers to manage in the minor leagues, which right when I retired, I said, no, I'm done with this. That's why I'm coming home from playing. So then the Tigers had contacted me and they said, well, what about something a little bit more part-time so that you could still be home and be dad like you want to? And I said, well, what are you thinking? I said, well, why don't you just come over? And it was Steve Lubradich. He was assistant general manager of the Tigers at the time. Why don't you just come over and help with batting practice? I was like, sure, no problem. So what happened was it wasn't really catching in the bullpen as much as it was helping with batting practice. So I would throw batting practice to guys in the cage or on the field early if they needed. I would have soft toss drills. So I do a lot of the cage, all of pregame prep work for all the Tigers hitters. And I'd basically be the right-hand man for the Tigers hitting coaches, whoever they were over all those years. I ended up doing it for 12 years. Wow. Now, the catching part of it was interesting because if they needed me, I would run down, if the pitching coach was short a catcher or whatever, somebody had to get a bullpen in. I had gear in my locker to go down and do that, but I really didn't want to, believe it or not. And I didn't really I didn't phrase it to them that way, but after all the years of catching, I kind of wanted to get away from the squatting and hopefully save these legs of mine. But I did get the opportunity because they needed an extra guy at the All-Star game in 05. So I caught in the bullpen for the National League, and I caught part of the Home Run Derby. So pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool. If you look back at some of the old pictures, do you remember that was the year? Remember Bobby Abreu hit like 24 or something? Of course, Vladdy put that to shame this year, but it was pretty cool.
I actually watched that home run derby because the guy tipped me off that said that you were catching that home run derby. So I watched Pudge's first round, which you were catching.
Right on,
and
yes.
Chris Berman actually mentions that you two were talking about where the ball was going to be placed.
Sure. Well, because he had, I think it was Mick Kelleher, our first base coach, throwing to him. So a lot of times you have that familiarity, as we saw this year with Vladdy, had John Schneider throwing to him. because he was so comfortable with him from BP and his AA days in New Hampshire. So yeah, small world. Well, this all comes together, but
That's so cool.
pretty
That's
cool.
so cool.
Yes.
Before we get into your broadcast career, I want to ask you, Joe, about, and Tim and I were sharing texts back and forth about this. So you're primarily a catcher, but there were a few innings in the majors that you ended up in the outfield. You played first base a little bit too. But Tim and I, when we play slow pitch, we're infielders. We don't go to the outfield. So when we're losing pretty bad, the team throws us out there, and they're the bench. We're shaking out there, and no good happens with us in the outfield. What's it like all these years catching, and then get to the majors and having to play a couple innings out in the outfield?
I felt the same way you guys did. Trust me. Trust me. I felt the same way. It was emergency. I think it happened in Montreal one time when Felipe threw me out in left field. Now, I did get a little bit of experience. I think it was in AA. I was in Harrisburg with the Expos probably a couple of years prior. And same thing, minor league teams, you get injuries, you get short. And I remember telling my manager back then, I was like, yeah, I'll play anywhere. You just try to get in the lineup, because I was oftentimes a backup type catcher. I wasn't playing every day anyway. So it happened in AA. So I had a little experience, but it means nothing. Yeah, big league ballparks are so different. And the reason they're so different is because now you have the extra tiers, the upper deck, and the depth perception is just so different. And that's the trickiest part. And that's why even shagging, when I first got called to the big leagues, that was one of the first things I noticed. Just being out in the outfield at Three River Stadium there, shagging for batting practice, very different. There's nothing routine. It was like, it took a lot of getting used to. So when I did, it was one time with the Expos. I'll have to check back, but I think it was one time with the Expos. Felipe threw me out there. But then I went in, believe it or not, to right field for Bobby Higginson one day. I think it was a blowout game, and I was like, oh, no. Just please hit it over my head and get over the bleachers. It was in Tiger Stadium. Too.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, so, I was scared to death. Don't, I'm not going to lie.
There's nothing routine when we're out there, Tim. I don't think we've never caught a ball. We've never caught a ball. Let's get you into the broadcast booth now, Joe. So life happens, and the story about you ending up in the broadcast booth is so chilling, and it's just such a cool story, and it's such a tough time in your life. Did you want to talk about that, or can you?
Sure, absolutely, yes.
So your son Kevin, why don't you pick it up from there? I'll let you explain the story.
So I obviously had finished my career. I'd been doing the Tigers thing for batting practice for about 12 years, and I was still doing it actually when things happened. But Kevin was 14 at the time. He's the youngest of 4 children. We have 2 boys and 2 girls. Kevin was the youngest, and I was coaching his Pee-wee probably team. And that was Bantam, I think. And we had a game out in Riverside, and he had a really good game too. And here's the irony again. He first time up, I think he hit one in the gap and hit a double, and then he got to third base, and I was coaching third base, really out of breath, really just having a tough time. And I think the weekend after this, we were going to London for a tournament, trying to get my kids all an inning to pitch, just organizing the weekend. But every time he kind of running around, he was getting short of breath. And I was going to get him pitch the final inning. And I said, Kevin, can you give me an inning, right? Because everybody was kind of pitching an inning, get ready for the weekend. And he's like, no, I don't think so. And I kind of went, wow, that tipped me off. Like, my wife's a physician, so I kind of alerted her when we got home. Well, test after test, he comes back, and apparently he's got this massive tumor on his chest. So immediately to the hospital, immediately to London. Long story short, it was 6 horrible months of our lives that we will soon forget. But it was terrible. It was a terrible lymphoma that spread. It was vicious. It was aggressive, and all the chemo treatments that he got did not work. I ended up in Toronto for a few weeks for a clinical trial there. It didn't work. Came back to London because that's where he wanted to be. It was closer to home. It was where a lot of his family and friends could come visit him more easily. So really his choice to come back to London rather than stay there. And we'll still remember that. But the community, guys, and this whole area, I mean, this city where we live and this community where we live, it's just ridiculously giving and caring and loving. And that's one thing we will all take back. And my wife, Tamara, and I, and our other 3 kids now, they're all about being grateful. And we've all tried to take the most positive spin in the world, as hard as it is to do. And I'd be lying to you if I wasn't trying to fake myself out right now, because I still do as I tell the story. You got to try to go get over those obstacles, those hurdles, try to be grateful for what we do have, try to be grateful for what we had in Kevin for 14 years. And that's it's a little easier to talk about, obviously, now. But it was a horrible thing in our lives. Something crazy came out of it for me. And that was this broadcasting gig. And it was thanks to my first partner, Jerry Howarth.
And the story here, and I hope you don't mind telling it again, is
No.
just so wild, like the connections. And so he passed away in February of 2014. And then not too long after, you end up in the broadcast booth. How does that all come together?
Well, think about when spring training starts, right? Late February. So he passed away early February. And when we were, Brett, his older brother, he was at Canisius College playing baseball there. And so we were all wondering what we're going to do with the kids and what you want to do. Do you get back to the routine? Do you get back to school? And his team was heading to North Carolina for a trip. And he wanted to go. So he told his coach he wanted to go. And so he went. Well, my wife and I thought we would go too, just to be there for him. And whether he played or not, we'll just kind of keep an eye. And while I was there, I was talking to, I got an email in the meantime, it was just right after the funeral, from Jerry Howarth, radio voice of the Blue Jays. And I knew Jerry. I knew who he was. He knew who I was, but it's not like we were buddies and talked all the time. I knew Jerry because he showed up in Detroit whenever the Blue Jays came to town, and I'd be down on the field, and I'd say hello because I knew he was this legendary voice of the Blue Jays. And he just knew me because I was Canadian, and I happened to play in the big leagues a little bit. It was a quick hello, how are you, good, that was it. Well, I get an email from Jerry because that's the kind of guy he is. He found out my email address from a friend of a friend of a friend he knew. And I get this email that it was just all about condolences for the loss of your son. He went on and on. But at the very end of the email, he said that, what did he say? He said something about wanting to, thoughts and prayers and everything about that. You know what? It was more my reply. When I replied to him, I just thanked him for it. But the key of my reply was at the very end, I said, look forward to seeing you. And it was maybe like in June when the Blue Jays were coming to Detroit. But then my last line was something along the lines of, or maybe in the broadcast booth one day. And to this day, guys, I don't know why I put it in whatever terms I put it. I only did it because he's a broadcaster. Like I wasn't thinking about a broadcasting career at all. So and his reply came in like a minute or two and it said, how about right now?
Wow.
Well, ironically, Jack Morris had just finished his only season with Jerry and he was deciding to move on back to Minnesota. So the Blue Jays were actively, Sportsnet or the 590 The Fan was actively looking for a replacement. Well, Jerry said, so I replied, I said, you got to be kidding me, right? He said, no. So he told me about Jack and how they're actually looking. So he gave me the program director's name and number, or he was going to call him first. And then he said that he'll give you a call when you get back from your trip seeing your son play on Monday. And I'm like, yeah, right, whatever, right? Well, wouldn't you know it? I'm getting emails while I'm in North Carolina from this program director asking what's going on. So I kind of, the whole spiel. Well, I get home and he said, let's talk Monday morning when you get home. Well, he called me at 9 a.m. right when he said.
Wow.
Don Collins was the program director at 590 The Fan. And he said, to be honest with you, we talked about a half hour, but it was mostly about Kevin and what we had just been through and the family. I didn't know the guy. I just met this guy on the phone, and I thought we were going to be talking about a potential maybe job. That's all it was. He said, you know what, Joe, why don't you just take your time? It was about 30 minutes later. He said, let's just leave it. Maybe you and your wife come to Toronto this summer sometime. We'll bring you into the studio, show you around the whole bit. I said, sounds good. Well, then a few days later, things changed a little bit. He said, wow. Hey, what do you think of maybe coming on our show? So he wanted to come on. I had to go on the Jeff Blair show because he had to prove or warrant to his bosses of maybe bringing me down to Florida. So I went on the Jeff Blair show for 10 or 15 minutes, and I knew Jeff from our Montreal days. Jeff was with the Montreal Gazette. So did a little show, and of course I had to brush up on my Blue Jays trivia and how they're doing because I wasn't really a Blue Jays fan. So I had to make it sound like I knew what I was talking about. And then it went very well. He called me right after, the program director, and that's when he started talking about where this might go. He said, is there any chance you could come down to Florida maybe for a week? We've got a few guys on the go that were auditioning. And I said, yes. And by this time, I remember saying to my wife, we're in the kitchen, and I couldn't believe this is even happening, that something might happen here with broadcasting. And I said to my wife, I said, I think I should just dive into this head first right now, like not this part-time couple games here. Let's just go for it and see where it happens. And we were in a fog. We didn't know what we were doing. So that's what I said. That was the approach I took. And he said, well, why don't you come down to Florida for a week? We'll get you some games because he's got other guys auditioning too. So I said, great. So that was the plan. This was like on the Monday or Tuesday, and he was asking me to fly out like on the weekend, like Saturday, I think. So a few hours passed. Later in the afternoon, he calls back. He says, Joe, any chance you can get on a plane tomorrow? And I remember I was in the kitchen. I looked at my wife and I said, yeah, there's a good chance, but I better pass this by my wife first just to drop this on. So she's laughing too. I mean, we were just like, really? Is this for real? So I flew down to Florida on I think it was the Wednesday. I met him it was a welcoming thing with all of our Sportsnet people. I did the Thursday first game of the Blue Jays spring training at Clearwater against the Phillies with Jerry. I basically met Jerry in the morning on the field in Dunedin. They were taking batting practice before they went over to Clearwater to the Phillies field. We talked for about 20 minutes along the right field line, and he just basically gave me broadcasting 101 about, when the pitcher's getting ready to toe the rubber, leave me to describe the delivery, the pitch. You get your insight in between pitches, just all the little things that might help me. Because I've never broadcast in my life. So we did that, and the game went pretty well, I thought, for my very first thing ever. And Jerry thought it went well, too. And the guy, my program director, called me that night. He said, "Hey, excellent job. You're good for tomorrow?" I said, "Sure, absolutely." So we did tomorrow. Well, the second game, I did 2 games, guys, and he asked me if I had time to meet him for dinner, and he offered me the job.
Wow.
So it was whirlwind. Yeah. I was like, whoa, like offer the job full time, 162. Like I think I got a week off or whatever, but full time radio broadcaster for the Blue Jays alongside Jerry Howarth, just like that.
Awesome.
So that's how it all started.
Wow. We're so jealous. We got to play for the Tigers and we get to broadcast for the Blue Jays. That's our dreams right here. So that's such a cool story.
I'm
Tim,
just thinking, I'm just thinking like Ernie Harwell days of listening to Tigers baseball. Like that's got to have, when you get to jump in a booth after you listen to Ernie Harwell for so many years. I'm living vicariously through your stories here.
Yeah, let me rub it in a little bit more. This one story I love also because as I said, when I signed with the Tigers, I thought that was so cool to go to big league camp, and I'm there with Tony Clark and Bobby Higginson and all the big name guys. And my first day in Lakeland, I was in the clubhouse. And around the corner, I heard this voice, but I didn't see the person. And you know who it was. It was Ernie. He was talking to somebody, and I heard the voice. My back was to that side of the room, and I think I just perked up and went, "Oh, my goodness." And as soon as I turned like this and saw, it was Ernie Harwell. And so I went and I introduced myself. And Ernie was the most gentle, kind human being you're ever going to meet. I loved listening to him, and he was fantastic to be around. Special man. So that's my Ernie Harwell story. I love that guy.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to go to Comerica for Ernie Harwell's farewell speech when he got on the field when he was battling cancer.
Sure.
And that feel of just thinking back and listening to Ernie Harwell call games is a baseball memory that I always have.
And then I was very fortunate too. And Jerry Howarth is much the same from the Blue Jays perspective, and a legendary broadcaster for so many years. And I was just very fortunate because I came in at a time, very fortunate that all of this happened, but to come in at a time with a guy like Jerry, who is such a pro and so good at what he did, that he was able to mentor me and help me become a broadcaster. And little things, guys, like I try to speak pretty well grammatically. I try, and I will have a hiccup every once in a while, but he had little cue cards, and I'll never forget the one time when I said, "There's 2 outs here in the 7th." And he said, "No, there is 2 outs. There are 2 outs. It's plural." Little things. Those are little things. That's just one of many, many examples. Gonna, he's going to round second and go to third. No, gonna is not a word. He would say it's going to. He would write it on a little index card and put it right in front of me in the broadcast booth.
Wow.
So I would, of course, after a while, I was kind of rolling my eyes a little bit, thinking I'm just having a tough enough time talking here on the broadcast, let alone doing it grammatically correct. But yeah, he was great in that regard. So I had a very good mentor on that side, but luckily too, I also got to fill in for Pat Tabler on the TV side when he was away. So I was with Buck Martinez. Well, does it get any better? So I got to do it with Jerry on the radio side. Very little, but I think I did about a dozen games with Buck on the TV side, and that's a whole other animal, of course. So that was really, and then that's where Buck helped me a lot because Buck's a former player. He did the analyst thing. He does play, but he's just got so much experience that I remember with Buck, one thing that comes to mind, we were taping our open before the game, and we do that around 6:30. So we're taping the open, and I butchered it the first time, and I butchered it the second time, and we just, when one of us messes up, we just stop. Usually it's one hit, it's pretty good, but this is very new to me. He turned around and looked at me, said, "Just look in that camera and pretend you're talking to your son about baseball." And I kind of went, oh, because I had all these things. I knew what I was going to be talking about, but I had like all these things prepared in my mind, and it was so rigid instead of just letting it go and maybe talking to the pictures. And my God, it was the best advice I'd ever gotten. So that's kind of the way I do it now. And I still, to this day, I still prepare a lot. That's just the way I was as a player. I think I am that way as a person. I feel like I have to prepare to feel good about what I'm embarking on. And I'll do that to this day. And I probably over prepare because, again, half the time I don't even use a quarter of my notes that I prepare before broadcast. You got to do the prep. But when it comes to cameras rolling, you got to kind of be yourself.
Yeah.
Joe, when we asked you to come on, we said 10, 15 minutes. So you've got it well above it. I apologize for that. But are we going to see baseball this year? Where do you stand on this? What's going to happen?
So we just taped a segment, and we had John Paul Morosi and Shai Davidi on with us. And, I think the one thing that's happened in the last week or 10 days is the conversation's changed a little bit from that. Will there be baseball? And it seems to be more now along the industry leaders and the national media is, when will it be? So that's a good thing. We're talking more about when now than will it actually happen. And I think the answer to when, nobody knows, guys, but I think best case would maybe be around the 1st of July. Could we have a 2-3+ week training camp in June? But my goodness, the more I hear about it, the more I think logistically, like, how are they going to do this? Now, things can change a lot in a month. By the end of May, but even in a few weeks, by the end of this month, a lot can, the virus certainly, I think, will dictate a lot of what happens. Yeah. But we're all hoping that things are getting a little bit more under control to proceed with things like sports. But I mean, things are still touch and go in a lot of places in the U.S. And, the one proposal was about having teams play in Arizona and Florida in the spring training facilities. That to me made a little bit more sense, only because you're confining the number of states that are involved. But the talk of teams being in each of their 30 cities, that's almost seems a little bit out of the box for me.
For sure. You were talking about preparing and don't use all of this stuff. I got tons more notes, but we don't want to keep you here all night. We always wrap up with who would you rather have a beer with? Question for our guests. Okay, we give you options. Okay. So we've thrown this around. I'm going to throw something out here, Tim, because we hadn't even talked about this. But you mentioned some names, your broadcast names. So who would you rather have a beer with in a perfect world? Ernie Harwell, Buck Martinez, or Jerry Howarth? And you could. Sit down. You'd have to have a drink with one of them. Who would you most like to sit down and have a beer with?
I spent a lot of time with all three of those gentlemen. Ernie didn't drink. Jerry didn't drink.
No way.
And Buck and I have had a lot of beers together. I have to tell you, Buck and Tabby have been so good to me and kind of bringing me up and taking me under their wing since I started this, that we've become very good friends, all of us. And yes, a post-game bevy is a very good thing after talking for 3 hours. You get a lot of dry mouth.
There you go. There you go. Joe, thank you so much. Say hi to your brother Ted for me, because his guidance led me down a career that I'm very happy with. So.
There you go.
That's awesome. Tim, you have anything else, buddy?
No, let's go Tigers. Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate it.
Maybe we'll get him in the same division again someday.
Oh boy.
That'd be something.
Bring it on, Joe.
My pleasure, guys. Anytime.
Joe,
thanks.
Thank you very much. Joe Siddle from Windsor, a former Major League Baseball player. Wow, that was great. And I do apologize to Joe, because we only said 10, 15 minutes, but
it was good. I loved it. We could have stayed on there forever.
Yeah.
I do want to say that I did crack the third beer. Again, Rally Cap. We have played baseball. I think this would be our 10th season together, and we have needed the Rally Caps many a times in our seasons together. So that's why I went with the Rally Cap as my third beer. Man, was that awesome though. What a good guy.
He is a really good dude. Hopefully we can get him on again, because there's a lot of stuff in there too. And I would have but I would have liked to have dipped into some of his minor league stories too, because he played quite a bit in the minors. And I want to know if he was a catcher. That's Bull Durham right there. He's the dude. So appreciate it. I did dip into another one too. I'm only going 2 tonight, so I got a cowbell here.
Breaking the rules again. That's okay.
Hazy days. I'm good. I'm good for 2 years.
Too. For sure. That was good, man. That was a lot of fun, man. Baseball gets me excited though.
Yeah.
It's during these times though, you're just like, everyone just keep doing what they need to do so we can get to something like baseball in the future, right?
Well, we joked off the top about a slow pitch. I'm almost resigning to the fact it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And hopefully we can get something with Jays and Tigers or something going on there, because That needs to happen at some point.
Yeah,
But wow.
I'm so glad that Joe mentioned these hats too. What a sweet. pulled this out of the closet today. I had this for a long time. I had to do some modifications to fit this large hat. No, it's not Kate's hat. This is an original one when I was growing up. I had to take the inner lining out of it so it fit this large crane.
Yeah.
Man, this has been a great night. I'm gonna go watch some base Tiger highlights.
You know what? He is great on Jay's broadcast too, man. I'm telling you, for the story, I didn't know if he'd want to get into it, but the story of his son passing away and then 3 weeks later ending up in the broadcast booth, and he didn't get into it, but and it may be just the internet lore, but the first game he called that was a Jays win was on his son's birthday, and it was won by a guy named Kevin. So, what a wild story! So,
that's something, man.
Pretty cool stuff. Joe Siddle, cheers to him. Thanks for tuning in. Timmer, you got anything else, buddy?
No, that was awesome, man. I'm gonna go watch some Tigers highlights now.
Yeah, let's bring back baseball. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you next week for the 3 Beer Pod in episode number 6. Thank you.